Alright, hello. So, I have my presentation here. Sorry the camera angle is like a little bit off. This is as best as I could get it. So, anyway, so my presentation, I decided to do it on sedentary behavior and its negative outcomes. So, I'll just jump right into it. So I have my introduction here. So, sorry if you can't really read those, but I'll just explain everything and as I go. So sedentary behavior is increasing several health risks in children and adults alike. So it's a problem between all ages. Adolescents are spending more screen time than active time during the day. Some aren't even getting the minimum required physical activity during the day, which is an hour for children and half an hour for adults. So it's the recommended physical activity. Sitting too much during the day can be detrimental to a person's health. So children or adult, like I said, all ages, increasing movement throughout the day can, even just small changes, like for children walking to school or adults taking the stairs whenever possible, taking these extra steps can decrease obesity rates, postural issues, and many other disease risks. Okay, before I go on, I have a couple questions for you guys to consider throughout my presentation. Just a few questions, just to keep in mind. You don't really have to know the answers. If you do, awesome. But if you don't, I'll be answering the questions throughout my presentation, and at the end, I'll finish answering them in full. So, my first question is, how can you change a sedentary lifestyle, even small changes? So, number 2, what's the difference between a sedentary lifestyle and an inactive lifestyle? What countries have developed guidelines intended to limit the negative health effects that come with sedentary behavior? And number 4 is, what function does sedentary behavior impair? Okay, so just like keep those questions in mind, and I'll be answering them as I go. So we're moving on to the next slide here. So what is sedentary behavior? It isn't just the lack of physical activity. It's a group of activities done while sitting or laying down, requiring little to no energy expenditure, not including sleeping, obviously. It's the low energy requirements that differ from sedentary behavior and an inactive lifestyle. So it differs from other activities done while sitting down. For example, sitting down at your computer compared to laying down on a bench press. Obviously, you need to be expending energy on a bench press, whereas sitting at a computer, you're using very little energy just to keep you upright, kind of thing. So, sedentary behavior has potential to cause cardiovascular disease, lower mortality rates, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. So, prolonged sitting can also lead to postural problems without low intensity activities involving those postural muscles. So sedentary behavior in adolescence is a risk factor for, okay, so we're moving on to the next stage. Sedentary behavior in adolescence is a risk factor for physical, psychological, and emotional health among youth. Young people who are highly sedentary have greater fat mass, greater BMI. They are at risk for obesity and just like, all that fun stuff. They have, a greater risk of being overweight. So next slide here. So sedentary behavior tracks from childhood to adolescence all the way to adulthood. So those behaviors need to be focused on in children so we can enforce those better habits of moving throughout the day. Very few groups of countries have developed guidelines for reducing sedentary behavior and their negative effects. So of those behaviors among the youth, strategies in these countries include active transport, like children walking to school or biking, and then active play within school, so like the gym classes and recess that you would find in elementary. So how do we change our sedentary behavior? Even changing small things will make a world of difference. So like sitting on a Bosu ball at your desk, taking a long way to the bathroom, completely changes the lifestyle, even those small things. So sitting too much during the day can be hazardous to everybody's health. Even when meeting the minimum physical activity throughout the day, so like the half hour for adults and an hour, you could still be classified as having a sedentary lifestyle if most of the day you're sitting. So sedentary behavior impairs the function of the body's healthy cholesterol, and which the healthy cholesterol cleans the plaque that's sticking to the inside of your arteries, which could cause cardiovascular disease. Moving on to the next slide here. Studies indicate that moving more during the day on top of the 30 minutes of vigorous activities is necessary to lower the risks of all those diseases. So some ideas to get moving during the day are taking a walk every coffee break you take, standing up and moving when you take a drink of water, whenever possible standing up as opposed to sitting down at your desk. And again, taking the stairs whenever possible, as much as possible. So all of these together can aid in lowering health risks and reducing the sedentary behavior. So that is the end of my presentation here. So I will answer the questions that I asked at the beginning of my presentation here. So the first question was, how can you change a sedentary lifestyle, even the small things? So small things like taking the stairs and standing at your desk, all the stuff that I answered during my presentation. The second question is, what's the difference between a sedentary lifestyle and an inactive lifestyle? So you can be living a sedentary lifestyle and still be active and be considered sedentary. Inactive meaning you sit for a majority of the day and you don't meet the minimum 30 minutes of vigorous activity a day that they recommend. So question number 3 is, what countries have developed guidelines intended to limit negative health effects of sedentary behavior? So there's a very few amount of countries that have these guidelines in place, which are Australia, us in Canada, Finland, France, New Zealand, the UK, and USA. So yeah, very few who actually have those guidelines. So then the last questions that I asked was, what function does sedentary behavior impair? So that was the healthy cholesterol that I answered earlier in my presentation. So yeah, so all of these things combined could just increase healthy living, and hopefully we can get the ball rolling with that stuff going. Yeah, so that is it. That's all I have. I will post my references as a separate post. I currently don't have any Wi-Fi, so I couldn't get it together all at the same time. So yeah, I will post that as a separate link in my upload. But yeah, so thank you for listening and have a wonderful night.